Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all well, and thank you for tuning in to this webinar. I'm Colin Fitzgerald. I teach on the Actuarial and Financial Studies course in UCD in Ireland. I'm going to talk to you today about ethics as a value-adding component in the data science. I'd like to thank the organisers of this virtual conference, Henning Vergen and his team, and also to give a shout out to Marketa and Suzanne for their help and work behind the scenes. I know I was very much looking forward to visiting Germany for the conference, as I'm sure many of you were. So in place of that, I've decided to give my slides a bit of a German theme, so we can maybe feel a little that we're in Germany. Many of you will have heard of the famous German Immanuel Kant. He asked the question, what is enlightenment? And his motto for enlightenment was quite simply, dare to be wise. And he said, for enlightenment of this kind, all that is needed is freedom. And the freedom in question is the most innocuous form of all, and that's the freedom to make public use of one's reason in all matters. So, to take Kant's advice, I'd encourage you all to bear that in mind for this talk and for the rest of the conference. A little background on data ethics. So most of you are fairly familiar with the new emerging roles in this area. So chief data officers started appearing about 20 odd years ago. In the last 10 years, we've seen roles such as chief ethics officer, data ethicist, AI ethicist, increasingly in the last few years. They're defined in various ways. One way I thought was quite nice for the AI ethicist was that it was someone who aims to use AI to augment human capabilities and to build trust into intelligent products. And trust will be one of the key topics of this talk. For those of you who are new to the area and quite curious to learn a little bit more, there's two good articles you could read at your leisure. Put links to them there. And again, I think most people are quite familiar with the issues in data ethics from just using your phone and clicking on yes to cookies and all those type of things. That the issues are privacy, ownership, fairness, and of course the one that is most important is that of trust. Also, as background to this talk, I thought it would be useful to just highlight something which I guess is quite obvious to many actuaries, but probably not fully obvious to everybody, and that's a little bit of actuarial history. So when it comes to insurance companies, trust is really important. Years ago, a long time ago, a lot of insurance companies used to go bust, so policyholders couldn't really trust the insurance companies. And the founders of the actuarial profession, in their wisdom, realized that if you take a typical company structure, which has its flaws, can go bust, can continue and all that kind of stuff, but if you add an actuary who is very strong technically and who has strong ethics, who has a duty to put the public interest first with a sound structure around that, where we can make it kind of functional, then you're going to create a situation where the insurance company is much less likely to go bust, and the policyholders can trust the insurance company more. If you would like to kind of find out a little more about actuarial history, what actuaries do, and so on, if you're not an actuary, there's a link to a video there which you might like to watch. So the main topic, as I was saying, of this talk is that of trust. And I think the basic idea of trust is very simple. it's something that a 6-year-old can understand, that if you can't trust someone, and why is trust so important? Well, we know what happens when it goes wrong, and I guess that's just one example. Most of the famous German thinkers of the past, like Schiller, Goethe, Wagner, Schopenhauer, Hegel, and so on, they're all quite influenced by classics. And one classical thinker that influenced them was Aristotle. He had this very wise but very simple idea that when we're engaging with people, when we're engaging with a company, when we're engaging with whoever we're engaging with, that there's three things that affect the degree to which we're influenced by what's said, the degree to which we might be able to trust what's said. And he said the three factors were ethos, logos, and pathos. Ethos is effectively someone's character. Are they a good guy, not so good guy or girl? What sort of rationalizations are they giving us? And what sort of emotions are you feeling? What's your kind of gut instinct? And Aristotle says, as human beings, they're the three things that we take into account when we're trying to work out, can you trust someone? To what extent are we going to be influenced by what's said, and so on? And he said that character is the most important. Again, I think this is something that you could probably explain to a 6-year-old. The problem, or the difficult part, is that character is very hard to assess. It's easy for pretentious people to kind of pull the wool over people's eyes sometimes. And to really determine someone's character, you can only really do that over time and also seeing them under stress. So the character bit is kind of the key bit. And that leads us to the question, can we measure character? Because if we can, that would be very useful. And also, can we develop and manage character? Because if we want customers to be able to trust us, to trust our organization, if we can improve character, and that's likely to help as well. So effectively, these two things of measuring character and developing and managing character have the potential to be quite value-adding, or play a value-adding role in data ethics and data science. Well, luckily, we actually have a methodology to quantitatively assess character, and that's available on a website which is launching today for this conference, called www.knowyourselftest.com. This is an actuarial test developed by an actuary with actuarial funding. Some of the theory behind it is based on the theoretical ideas of Leibniz, who's a very famous German mathematician, although he also had a lot of other thoughts and did other things other than maths as well. One of his ideas was that of monads, and the idea was basically that as individuals, we all have a psyche or a soul, depending on what word you want to use, and that can kind of be represented as a sphere. And each of our spheres is kind of fairly similar in some ways and fairly not the same in other ways. And looking at people that way can be quite useful. That's according to Leibniz. I'll say a little bit more about that in a couple of slides' time. As regards developing and managing character, in the ancient world, there was two systems of education, one for the polity, the citizens, and the other for the doulos, the servile parts of the society. Unfortunately, in the modern world, even though we're very technically advanced, we mostly have the servile education system, but the education system for the free people does exist in some small ways. One way is regarding instruction on character formation, and this is effectively a modern version of what used to be called education. Education literally means to draw out from an individual their best self in order to create a citizen. The aim of it was to know yourself, which doesn't mean, you like red cars or blue cars. It means to know yourself in the context of the human condition. Why is this important? Well, we see the world the way we are, partly the way we are, and partly the way the world is. And see the world the way it is, we need to know ourselves. And the key thing in getting the best out of ourselves in order to be a good character is to know ourselves in a better way. I'm going to try to explain this a little bit more. It's probably quite a new concept to many of you. So from a classical context, our mind was not just our head. Our psyche, our mind was made up of our heart, our head, and our guts. The idea was that basically our heart creates the stories and the pictures of the world that we use. And that's how we live our lives. Our head can only operate within those stories, and our guts gives us the light and the energy for it all. I guess you can explain it somewhat using maths. So suppose we're feeling very natural, we're in a very natural, relaxed state, where you could say we're in the natural numbers. When we were younger and in school, we did maths for the first time, and we had a set, and we had functions, and the functions operated on the set. We mostly spent most of our time doing maths, talking about the functions, and didn't so much think about the set. However, the set dominates and limits the functions that can be carried out on it. So if we're in the natural numbers, and if we decide, hey, we're going to add in some negativity, then we can get into the integer numbers, so our world increases. Then if we decide, I think we'll do some rationalizations, we can move into the rational numbers. It's still a relatively comfortable space. But we're quite limited in terms of the maths we can do there. But if we decide, I've got all that irrationality out there, if we try to maybe bring that into our world a little bit, and we have a bit of rationality and a bit of irrationality, all of a sudden we're in the real world, and we can do a lot more powerful maths, a lot more powerful other things as well. But when we get to the real world, it can be a bit more uncomfortable, but what we find over time is that a lot of the most important things that are going on are the things that are going on behind the scenes. And so if we bring in the imaginary numbers as well, and the real numbers, we can create a big, complex world. And if we're in that world, we have the ability to do more powerful things. So Aristotle famously said that educating the head without educating the heart was no education at all. And effectively what we're saying here is it's not just the logic and all that kind of stuff that matters. It's an individual's heart. It's effectively their character. So your character is effectively the set that you operate. To cut a long story short, there was 4 classical character types. The first was the brute, who was kind of a base individual. They were kind of irresponsible, brutal, pretentious, full of nonsense. There was a conformist who, like the brute, was kind of scared but didn't act in the destructive way because they were scared. Instead, they decided that they'd respect norms and traditions, and they would try to fit into a group and find safety in that group. They're usually a bit weak and afraid. They didn't really like responsibility, didn't like making decisions, didn't like expressing opinions too much, and often they wanted kind of a stronger character to look after them. Then you had the egoist, who also kind of respected norms and traditions, but wasn't dominated and limited by them. They were responsible, hardworking, and prudent, but mostly looking after themselves. And they just thought, I look after me, you look after you, everything will be okay, which causes issues. And then there was the best character, that of a citizen who was like an egoist, but was also socially responsible. They're willing to act beyond their own self-interest for the greater good. The idea in a democracy was that it was the citizens that ruled, as in those of a character like that. That's the way it was meant to work. In theory, it didn't always work that way in practice. And the idea was they would rule rather than the brutes. And so the conformist would have a citizen character to lean on, and egoists wouldn't bring in a tyrant kind of stuff. So I'm going to try to kind of outline this to you in the form of a video, or a story, you could say, on the issue of self-driving cars. A video which some of my students have put together. And in the video, there's 4 characters: a citizen, an egoist, a conformist, and a brute.
This play is set in an office where 4 main characters, 3 programmers and their manager, are in a meeting to discuss how they should program their self-driving car to avoid casualties in certain scenarios. Our characters are discussing what the car should do in an event where a collision is unavoidable.
Okay guys, we've reached the final stage of the development process. There are 2 choices left for us to make in the event of a fatal collision: to either program the car to prioritise the driver's safety over all others on the road, or if it should deem everyone's life to be equal, which could result in the death of the driver, but would have resulted in the fewest casualties. I have my mind fairly set on what I think we should do, but I would like to hear what you have to say before I make my decision final.
I know ethically the car should be programmed to treat everyone's life as equal, but I think it should probably take priority of the driver.
What do you mean, probably? Of course the car should put the driver's safety first. I wouldn't buy a car that didn't put my safety and well-being above others on the road, and neither would anyone else.
Yeah, well, that all sounds great, but I wouldn't really want the responsibility of choosing who should live or die. I think it might be a lot easier to just randomise the process and have the car decide in the moment.
That is a terrible idea. I'm not leaving the fate of my life up to mere chance.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's our job to program a safer road vehicle than what's already on the road. That's no better than, say, a human driving, which the stats show we're terrible at.
Yeah, but who are we to decide if your life is more important than anyone else's? We have to do the bigger thing here, put our own self-interest aside, and have the car decide in the moment what would result in the fewest casualties.
Yeah, I think you're right.
People won't buy any of our cars if they know that it doesn't put the driver's safety first.
Exactly, and poor sales will mean that my bonus is on the line.
Human life is more important than profit. Right, my decision is final, and that's it for today. Anna, can I trust you to implement the code correctly?
That's a big responsibility. I have a lot on my plate at the moment. Can anyone else do it, maybe?
Killian, can you do it, please?
Yeah, sure, whatever.
Thank you.
Hey Killian, come here for a second. Sean's a fool, and we both know it. You have the power to change the code, and I think it would be in both our best interests to put the driver's safety first.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's true that I don't want to drive a car that doesn't put my safety first, but if I do that, my job could be on the line.
So you'll never find out. And besides, if this goes through, we'll both be sitting on big bonuses by the end of the year. And if you don't do it, I'll start making life around here very difficult for you.
Save your threats for someone else. But yeah, I could do with the bonus. Buy a new car maybe. Alright, I'll do it.
Hey Anna,
Yeah.
can you show me the final draft of that code, please?
Yeah, of course. Let me just pull it up for you there now. There you go.
Hey, well, hold on a minute. This is wrong. This is putting the driver's safety first. Why didn't you tell me it was like this?
The thought crossed my mind, but I just presumed it was the right code. I didn't want it to cause a big fuss and a hassle for everyone.
Well, if something is wrong, you should tell me so that I can fix it.
Yeah, I know. Now that you mentioned it, I think Killian might have been the last person to change it.
Right, okay, I'll go talk to Killian. So. Hey Killian, why didn't you write the code that I specifically asked you to?
Oh, I was going to, but Brian made me change it. I only did it because he threatened me. I'm innocent, really.
That's some serious allegations to make. Brian, what do you have to say for yourself?
Listen, I didn't threaten him. I just gave him a gentle nudge in the right direction. Besides, I only did it because that's how it should be done. You should be thanking me, not punishing me. I don't care about some guy I've never met, and you shouldn't either.
Valuing your life over someone else's is one thing, but undermining my decision and bullying a colleague in the workplace, it's just not acceptable. I'm afraid I'll have to report you to the board, where it's likely they'll ask for your resignation.
Fine.
I'd like to thank my students, Sean Connolly, Killian Egan, Anna Trainer, and Brian Barrett for that video. And the question I'll ask you after the video is quite simply, who do you trust? And like, which one of those characters would you trust? And I think for a normal, ordinary person, the answer is very simple. And this brings us to the idea of character and data ethics. Who would you trust regarding the issues of privacy, ownership, fairness, and trust? Aristotle, who we've mentioned already, said, if the citizens of a state are to judge and to distribute offices according to merit, then they must know each other's characters, or do they not possess this knowledge, but election to offices and decisions of lawsuits will go wrong. So he's effectively saying if we get character right, things will work out. If we get characters a bit wrong, actually things will probably go the opposite way than the way we want them to go. Friedrich Nietzsche had a very similar kind of concept here as well. Also Erich Fromm, the psychologist who set up the Frankfurt School, their views was that there was basically a variety of ethical regimes out there depending on individuals' characters. And the ethical regime is effectively what someone thinks is good, what's good for them, what's good for everything kind of stuff. And depending on your character, the answer would vary. To give you an example of this, probably not the best of examples, but it hopefully gives you an idea of the characters. So a brute might think, trust me, respect my authority, everybody else is bad, so I'm going to be bad too. Everybody is pretentiously trying to get you to trust them, so I'm just doing what they're doing. I'm really a coward, but I'm going to try to deal with life brutally and pretentiously, pulling other people down, and I'll feel good about that. And that's good. And I can't see beyond that because my heart is so small. Then you could have a conformist who, their heart is a little bit small too because they're a bit scared. And they're thinking, what norm can I try to fit into here so I can think, so you can think you can trust me. I want to do the right thing here, but I'm scared, a bit overwhelmed by responsibility. Can some big guy come in and just sort it out for us and tell us what we should do? Or you can have an egoist who, is thinking, I'm hardworking, I'm as good as everybody else. You can trust me because I do my job well. I don't really care much about you because you don't really care much about me, but I'm better than those other people out there, so you can trust me. Or you can have a citizen who's thinking, let's create a framework for trust so that we have a more progressive business culture, a better functioning society, and everybody will be better off. And I guess the idea here isn't just limited to data ethics and so on. It applies equally to if you're a plumber. If you can provide a service that people can trust more, you can also charge more. And even though you're charging more because you're creating something more valuable, everybody wins. Bill Gates, a number of years ago, talked about different kind of rules of automation. There's probably similar or comparable rules in data ethics. You could say that the first rule of data ethics is if you apply a data ethics framework to a company with responsible and trustworthy characters, it can strengthen the trustworthiness and the profitability of the business. If you can trust them better, if that can be marketed and communicated properly to the customers, they're willing to pay more for that. The second is that if you apply a data ethics framework in a company without responsible and trustworthy characters, it will magnify the dysfunction and will ultimately harm the profitability and the trustworthiness of the business. It will probably cost you money because it won't work too well, and the trustworthiness of the business will suffer too. What this presentation is proposing as a method to deal with the issue of trust in data ethics and data science is the creation of what I will call a framework for trust, whereby individuals, if they're working on their own, or organizations, if they're working as a group of individuals, will have instruction on character formation for the staff. There will be character testing, and there will be a quality assurance process whereby if there is deficiencies in character spotted, that there would be remedial actions taken to fix that. So what role can actuaries play here? Well, actuaries can play the role that they've been playing for hundreds of years in insurance, and that is playing the role whereby we are aiming to create and maintain trust. What we need to do is we need to probably somewhat evolve our ethics education in a way that demonstrates greater credibility regarding trust, in order that it can be marketed and communicated properly. This will include material on data ethics, and the aim will be to position actuaries as a natural choice for data ethics roles. We can also use the actuarial tool, the knowyourselftest.com, for assessing character in a quantitative way. And more generally, the leaders of the actual profession can market the profession as one capable of building trust with customers, and that's building on our one of our core traditional strengths. With a view to helping this out as well, for attendees of this conference, you can use the code Ethical Actuary to get a 72% discount when using knowyourselftest.com between now and the end of July. Why 72%? Well, the website isn't purely a commercial venture, and it's mostly trying to make the tools more widely available. And also because 1972 was the year Ireland joined the European Union. I'm a big fan of the European Union. I think it's great the way we all work together for our own greater good. And it's not through force or anything like that. It's through a cooperation, which I think is really good. So thank you very much. That's a little bit more about me if you want to read about it. And I'd like to thank you very much for your attention. I hope you found that useful. You're welcome to use the website if you like, and if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them by email if you want to send one. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.